The last time I saw Alyssa, I gave her a ride to LAX. She was moving to New York, and I was feeling more bubbly than I had in a long time. To mark the occasion, I played an official bootleg CD of the October 13th, 2017 Afghan Wigs show at the Fonda that Alyssa and I had seen together so we could close up our relationship listening to a band that we both loved. Alyssa once described herself as having bad taste in everything except people. She had terrible taste in people. I say this as arguably the worst one of all, but she was right about the Afghan Wigs. The Afghan Wigs are one of my favorite bands, and if you date someone who loves them, you should talk about why. The Afghan Wigs are an indie rock band from Cincinnati inspired by Husker Du and Motown. They have 9 full-length albums, each one unique, but their legacy is inseparable from their 1993 breakout, Gentleman. Gentleman is a song cycle that chronicles the deterioration of a mutually sadomasochistic relationship soaked in drugs, deception, depression, and intense sexual shame. The lyrics are agonizingly frank in confronting the dynamics of emotional abuse, particularly the twin ballads, When We Two Parted and My Curse, the latter of which is sung by guest star Marcy Mays because the band's mercurial frontman Greg Dooley found himself physically unable to sing the lyrics himself, which you can hear in his demo. Representative lyrics from Gentleman include, "Ladies, let me tell you about myself. I've got a dick for a brain, and my brain's gonna sell my ass to you. I stayed in too long, but she was a perfect fit, and we dragged it out so long this time, started to make each other sick. Allow me to present you with a clue. If I inflict the pain, then baby, only I can comfort you." And this one gets me every time. "Now I'm ashamed, it burns, but the weight is off now that you're out of the way." It's a complex, contradictory record, by turns stomach-churning and desperately horny. The band's eclectic influences create a demonic and danceable mix that's vaguely reminiscent of early 70s Stones and sounded entirely out of place next to the anemic heroin chic of 1993 and was cursed with the regrettable label soul grunge. Dooley cut half of the final vocal tracks while sailing on cocaine and trying to impress a stripper the band had invited into the studio, and the album captures that energy. The lyrics deconstruct toxic masculinity from the inside out, creating a childish and pathetic character fully committing. At the time, some critics mistook this as an indication that Greg Dooley was just a bad person. In a Rolling Stone interview, Dooley said, "If you're hearing misogyny on this record, you have missed the fucking point. I'm the problem." He also said, "There are a lot of emotions in that record, and some of the songs are hard for me to sing. Gentleman is the motherfucker of all breakup albums, and Alyssa and I were both obsessed with it way before we got together. I spent a lot of time with Gentleman when I was in high school, before my parents got divorced, but after my self-involved dad gave my anger-prone mom a mysterious venereal disease. I was a shaggy, miserable teenager repressing sexual kinks that I mistook for indications that I was just a bad person. I don't think Gentleman put a curse on my future sex life, but I might want to be more careful about how I use the law of attraction." I've always loved meeting fellow Afghan Whigs fans in the wild, particularly intense women.
That's me.
In contrast to Frank Traynor, I've done pretty well for myself dating-wise. For a man whose entire life has been nothing but a swirl of red flags. I met Alyssa in a writing group where we bonded over our similar musical tastes and obvious sexual chemistry. She's one of those women I meet sometimes who seem to have flashing pink arrows over their heads. That's not always good. I hung out with her at a place called Jumbo's Clown Room. Which, if you don't know, is a neo-burlesque club that's the closest thing to a strip joint where you might actually hear the Afghan Whigs. And I mostly talked to her because the other members of her throuple refused to address me directly for whatever reason. I used Alyssa to buy Coke, which usually tasted like it was cut with decon and used cat litter. I joined the punk rock a cappella cover group she was in, even though my singing voice sounds like Lou Reed huffing gasoline in a boathouse. And we never got around to covering Debonair, the lead single from Gentlemen, which would have sounded badass. One night after practice, we went to her place, made out, fucked, and fell in love, beginning a mutually sadomasochistic relationship soaked in drugs, deception, depression, and intense sexual shame.
All right.
I had to stop drinking after my pancreas exploded a couple of years into our relationship, after which Alyssa got in the habit of getting blackout drunk, lashing out at me, threatening me, passing out, pissing the bed, and waking up with no hangover and no memory of anything that happened. At one point, she stopped screaming at me long enough to say, "I know this is emotional abuse," and then just got right back into it. Which distinguishes Greg Dooley as a master of subtlety compared to Alyssa. We had an open relationship, but only for Alyssa, and she never got around to telling me. Her litany of secret fuck buddies included at least 2 of her frenemies' sloppy seconds leftover exes, including one who became locally notorious as a serial date rapist. Most of them were younger than us or from New Zealand, and thus presumably not Afghan Whigs fans. With my sobriety came waves of self-loathing and shame. I was still an avoidant weirdo who used his admittedly severe depression to protect himself from intimacy. My mom was an angry drunk, and when women get mad at me, I shut down. And I'm still burning off all kinds of wretched karma from my dad. At the time, almost all of my friends were our friends, who were actually her friends. It never occurred to me to leave Alyssa because it never occurred to me that I didn't deserve all of this. There were also lots of good times. We had a blast at that Fonda show, which was our second attempt to see the Whigs together, and the first that Alyssa didn't ruin by getting shit-faced. I was always delighted when she had the opportunity to ruin something and then didn't. A couple of years before that, while I was still getting used to not drinking and needed some incentive to keep living, Alyssa bought us a shockingly good bag of Coke. And we stayed up all night blasting the Whigs' 2014 comeback album, Due to the Beast, and having such a passionate conversation that I could pretend we were in love again. I wish we talked about Gentlemen at some point. To obsess about a piece of art is to identify with it one way or another, almost inevitably. In Dooley's narrator, I see bits of my younger self, and that realization has helped me grow up. Gentleman is an ugly work of art that makes the world more beautiful by its existence. I wonder if Alyssa just heard it as a how-to. Where did you get this CD, she asked me as we pulled off the 105. I got it from the Afghan Wigs online merch store when I was looking at t-shirts. Don't wear an Afghan wig shirt, she said. That's a red flag. The moral of the story is if you have the opportunity to get in a relationship based on shared affinities or booze, coke, and the Afghan wigs, don't. Or at least talk it out first. Thank you.